Hello and welcome. If you own a Bernina similar to this model here and you find that when you push the foot controller down with your foot it goes down and then takes off all of a sudden like that, there's no ramp up of speed, there's no sort of slow acceleration, it's either nothing or everything like that. Well, what you can do is you can get into the foot controller and repair that issue. Now the first thing to do is absolutely make sure that you disconnect the power. Disconnect the power from the foot controller at least, but I would also disconnect the power cable as well to the machine, just in case. You just want to be really safe when you're getting into areas, you know, like these foot controllers here. So if we have a look on the bottom of the foot controller there, we've got 6 posi drive screws. So I explained in the last video what posi drive screws are and how they're different to Phillips screws. The Berninas, they use a combination of, you know, flat head, Phillips and posi drive, so it's quite a good idea to have a small range of screwdrivers if you're going to be doing this sort of thing. So this is the 220 to 250 volt version for the made for the New Zealand and Australian market, I guess, or I think even the UK uses 220 volt to 250, 0.4 amp, 700 ohm resistance, Swiss made, type 200. And if we have a look in here, what I think is happening here is that excuse all the dust in there. What I think's happening here is, see, as you push the foot controller pedal down, it pushes this plunger into this ceramic holder, and that holds a whole bunch of carbon discs. And as the carbon discs get squeezed together, that reduces the resistance. So it's just like a big variable resistor. If we have a close look here, the plunger actually comes right through and out the other side. So as you push your foot down, the carbon brushes should be being compressed, and then when the machine is, you know, when you floor it, this knurled nut shorts these two terminals, and that just gives you a straight short, you know, to give you full speed. So what I think's happening here is I think that this nut here is shorting these two terminals here too soon, so that's why we're getting a you know, just an instant jump in speed. So before this plunger has time to compress these discs, this is actually shorting and just, you know, putting the machine into full speed. So what you can do is you can adjust that nut, so we can bring that nut back a little bit just by, it's on a screw on the shaft there, so I'm just going to screw that nut in, and screwing it clockwise here. I can see what's happening here. Even though I'm turning the nut, it's actually turning the entire shaft, so it's not screwing up the thread properly. Maybe just get a very, very small amount of penetrating oil or something onto the nut there, just to free that up, because the nut's bound onto the shaft. Just got a little bit of penetrating oil. I don't want to go spraying much of this around at all. In fact, I might just dribble this onto a screwdriver. So what you can do is just get a screwdriver, put your oil, penetrating oil onto it, just so that it creates just a little drop there on the end of the screwdriver, and then just carefully bring the screwdriver in. That big drop actually came off on the table, fell off onto the table, but there's still a little bit of penetrating oil there. So just get that down onto that shaft there, and we might have to let that soak. Yeah, I think to do this properly, we'll take this whole unit out. That's not hard to do. We'll just disconnect the terminals here and undo these 4 screws. Now these are Phillips screws, just to confuse you. So there we have the unit, and we should be able to just get better access to here. Yeah, that shaft is still turning. Just be very careful when you're doing this that this plate here doesn't twist and turn, because the little springs can fly out and potentially the little carbon brushes may fall out. So what you can do is remove this cap here, and there's actually a screw slot here. Now if I grip the nut tightly with these long nose pliers here, I should be able to turn the screw back and forward just to sort of free it up a little bit. There we go, it's turning now. So I'm just turning this screwdriver on the end of the shaft here, and that's screwing the nut up the shaft. So I'm just going to go back and forward a little bit just to work that penetrating oil into the threads there. It should be quite tight anyway, because you don't want this coming loose. You can see here when I push the plunger right in as far as I can push it, this nut isn't shorting on these two terminals, so I need to loosen that off a little bit. Yeah, if I push it quite hard, it's shorting there now. So that the nut now is hitting the two terminals to short when it's at its fullest extent there. Get that bar into the little slot there. The bar goes into the plunger here, and then just screw up the 4 screws. Now these screws don't need to be overly tight. I wouldn't over tighten those, just in case it cracks the ceramic holder here. There we go, this should be, that's good there. And you can see that this is going to short as I push the foot controller at about that point there. So there's a little bit of movement still there, so this could be screwed in slightly. But let's see how that goes. Let's connect the two terminals here. And just put the lid back on, and let's do a little test run here. So that's looking a lot better now, a lot more controllable. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you very much for watching.